Welcome to Stories for Wonderful Children. I'm Dan Wendelin, your host and storyteller. Years ago, I began recording the bedtime stories I told my children every night. Now, we would like to share those stories with you. I hope you enjoy my Stories for Wonderful Children.
Once there was a little girl named Evee who was having a great deal of trouble deciding what it was she wanted for breakfast. First, she decided that she would try some of her mommy's breakfast cereal. So her mommy gave her a big spoonful of her breakfast cereal, and Evee took a little bite, and she thought it was pretty good, and then she took another bite, and when she took her second bite, she found there was something crunchy in the cereal. And she took it out, and she looked at it, and she said, "Oh, almonds! I hate almonds!" And she said, almonds aren't my favorite. Can I try something else?" She looked over at her daddy's cereal. She said, "Can I try your cereal, Daddy?" And her daddy gave her a big scoop of his cereal, and she tried it. And the first bite was really yummy. And then she took a second bite, and she tasted something squishy and sweet in the cereal. And she pulled it out of her mouth, and she said, "Oh dear, raisins. Raisins are not my favorite. Can I try something else?" And her mommy and daddy looked at each other, and they said, "Sure. If you can find something else you'd like, then you can try it." So Evee went over to her little brother's plate. Her little brother was having Cheerios, and Evee was going to ask him if she could have some of his Cheerios, but he ate the last ones before she got a chance. And when she went to look, she found out that that had been the last of the Cheerios. So she could not eat Cheerios. So she decided she was going to go see what else others were having for breakfast. So she went out in the backyard. The first one that she encountered was the family dog. The family dog was on the back porch eating dog food. Crunch, 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 crunch. Evee said, "Is that good breakfast?" The dog didn't say anything. The dog just sat there going crunch, 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 crunch. Well, Evee thought she'd try it. She took one piece of dog food, she put it in her mouth, and she crunched it up. Crunch, 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 crunch. She thought it was sort of salty. She thought it was sort of crunchy. She thought it was sort of yucky. She spit it out. She patted the dog on the head. She said, "Thank you for letting me try it."
Yuck.
So,
I wouldn't do something like that.
So then she went out to the barn, and the first thing she saw in the barn was a calf, and the calf was drinking milk from the mommy cow. And Evee thought, well, that's a good breakfast. But the calf was not interested in moving aside to let Evee have a drink of milk. And so Evee decided that she would just have to get some milk out of the refrigerator once she got back into the house. But first she needed to decide what she was going to have for breakfast. So she walked further into the barn, and there were the horses, and they were having hay for breakfast. Evee looked at the hay. She looked at the hay some more. She took one piece of the hay and took just a little bit and sort of nibbled on it. And she decided that it didn't taste like anything at all. She put the hay back in the feeding trough, and she scratched the horse, patted the horse gently on the nose. She walked further into the barn. She saw the cat walking by with a dead mouse in its mouth. She thought, I don't think I'm going to try that for breakfast.
Yeah, I wouldn't try a dead mouse.
Which was just as well, because the cat didn't look like it was interested in sharing anyway. And Evee thought that it would probably be rather difficult for her to catch a mouse on her own. So she left the barn, deciding that she really had not been able to find anything good. Well, then she went out to the pig pen. The pig was having slops for breakfast. Slops were just all the leftover food that Evee's family had left over. Evee decided she definitely did not want slops. They smelled kind of bad, and they looked sort of messy. Now, Evee didn't mind mess, but she didn't like food that smelled bad. But as she looked at the pig, she thought, bacon. Bacon would be yummy for breakfast. And she knew that her mommy had some bacon in the refrigerator. So now she was starting to get an idea of what she wanted. She could have milk, and she could have bacon. And then she decided that she would go and see what the chickens were having for breakfast. So she walked through the apple orchard. She walked through the apple orchard to get to the chicken coop. And as she walked through the apple orchard, she reached up and she picked an apple. And she sort of rubbed it off on her sleeve and she took a bite. And the apple tasted so good. It was sweet. It was juicy. And when she was so hungry because she had not had any breakfast, she thought, well, this right here would make a very good breakfast. And she munched on that crisp, delicious apple. She got to the hen house. The chickens were out front and they were eating corn. Now, Evee very much liked corn, but not the sort of dried corn that the chickens were eating. She liked corn when it was fresh off the cob. She knew that they did not have any fresh corn. It was the wrong season. But she noticed that the chickens were laying eggs. She took one of the eggs out of the nest and thought, scrambled eggs. And she walked back to the house, eating her apple, and she said, Mommy, Mommy. And her mother said, yes, Evee. She said, I know what I want for breakfast, Mommy. And her mommy said, well, I have to go to my meeting right now. So you can have whatever you like. You just have to cook it yourself. You can use the microwave. And so Evee got her egg and she tapped it gently on the side of a bowl until it cracked. And then she opened it gently and she had a couple little bits of shell that fell in too. And so she got a fork and she carefully picked out the bits of shell out of the egg with her fork. And then she scrambled the rest of the egg up and she put it in the microwave till it cooked. And then she took it out. She put it on a plate. And then she got 2 pieces of bacon from the freezer and she put those on a different plate and she put them in the microwave until they were hot and she could hear them sizzling through the microwave door. And she took that plate out and she put the bacon on the plate next to her eggs, and then she put the apple on the plate and she put that on the table. And then she went to the refrigerator and got herself a big tall glass of cold milk. She put it on the table and she sat down and she ate a bite of apple and a bite of egg and a bite of bacon, and then she took a drink of milk, and then she did the whole thing again until her plate was empty. And then she took it and put it in the dishwasher, and she decided that she was ready to start her day. But by that time, she had taken such a long time that her whole family was coming in, and they were getting ready for lunch. But she did not want lunch, so she decided that she was going to go color. So she went to her coloring books, and she got out her crayons, and she started flipping through the coloring book, looking for what to color. And she saw it was a coloring book of things around the house. She looked at the page of the bathroom, she looked at the page of the bedroom, and then she saw a coloring book page of people eating breakfast. And there was a little girl in the picture, and the little girl was having bacon and eggs and an apple and milk, and Evee knew that that was the picture she was going to color. And that is what she did.
Thanks for listening to Stories for Wonderful Children. I created today's story, but questions and witty commentary were supplied by my children. The music was created by Brandon Thompson. If you enjoy the show, please tell someone about it or leave a review on your podcast provider. Our website is storiesforwonderfulchildren.com, and you can also find us on most social media. I'm Dan Wendelin, reminding you to tell someone you love a story.